everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, hi, hello, and welcome to KB Decor Crafts. For today's video, I created 3 Kirkland dupes, all from using Dollar Tree products. This was my first time dedicating a video to just recreating some dupes, and I hope you all like them. Even though it's a little early, this definitely put me into the fall spirit, and I can't wait to start decorating. Alright, so let's get started. So for the first DIY, I'm going to use this scrap piece of poster paper and a printout that I created off of Canva that says Cozy Crisp Autumn Days. I will have a link on this in the description box below. So I took my 8x11 printout and placed it on top of the poster paper and traced out, leaving about 3.5 inches on the top and the bottom of the poster paper to see where exactly I wanted to cut out, giving myself some space on the top and bottom. Then at the bottom, I just made a line across just to indicate exactly where I needed to cut out where my poster would end. And of course, go ahead and cut that out. And then just taking a simple glue stick, I rubbed it onto the back of the entire paper to glue it onto my poster paper. I do have to note that I did use cardstock paper for this. It's not necessary, it's just what I had on hand, so you could just use regular printer paper. Once it's in place, just make sure it's nice and smooth and aligned with the poster paper. So now taking my ruler, I'm going to be drawing out the lines that I'm going to be painting navy blue. So I'm going to measure out the first strip to be about 1/2 inch wide, as well as the strip on the bottom. And also the strip in the center will actually be about 1 inch wide. You're going to want to leave some space in between each one that's just going to show white. Every other line will be navy blue. And go ahead and repeat the same process for the top. And then just taking some blue acrylic paint, I'm going to be creating the navy blue color that I need for this project by just adding a dab of orange paint and mixing that up until I get my desired color. Once the paint is ready, you can go ahead and start filling in your lines. And as you can see, you'll have every other line painted navy blue. So then to create my frame for the top and bottom portion of this project, I'm going to be using these Dollar Tree rulers and removing the strips that come off very easily. I'll then measure out where I need to cut these down to that'll fit right underneath that last blue strip. Then taking my handsaw, I'll just cut those down to size. Also remember to sand down any rough edges for a cleaner look to your project. So now I'm going to go ahead and use my Waverly Wax Antique paint to stain both of these wooden pieces. Once those are both dry, I then sanded them down to tone down some of that brown color. I was originally going to use the flat side of the ruler for this, but then I decided that I liked the way the ridges looked on the other side, so that's what I decided to go with. I then just hot glued it down, making sure to align it right at the very last strip on the bottom. This next part isn't necessary, but for me, I could see it in person. The paper was a little too white compared to the poster paper, so I just decided to fill that in with some white acrylic paint. Then taking a pair of scissors or X-Acto knife, go ahead and remove the excess paper on the top and bottom of this. I had some leftover Dollar Tree wooden stickers from last year, and I was going to use this size of a pumpkin to put on the bottom of this, but I decided to go with the glittery pumpkin instead and just turn it around and remove the adhesive and be able to paint on that side. For the leaf at the top right corner, I'm actually going to be using one of these from the Target Dollar Spot from last fall's collection. Hopefully they put out something similar, but I know Dollar Tree might carry something similar as well. Now I repainted them both using a mixture of brown and orange acrylic paint. I wanted to create that burnt orange color, so I just slowly kept adding more brown. Once I was happy with my color, I then dipped my paintbrush into some water and painted it all over the pumpkin to give it more of a wash paint rather than just a solid color. I then went ahead and did the same for the leaf. I did sand it down though first because it had more of a gloss shine finish to it, and I wanted the paint to really stick to this leaf. Then with a piece of paper towel, I dabbed off some of that paint to be able to show some of that wood through the color and not have it be such a solid paint color. I tried doing the same with the leaf and I ended up taking the paint off, so I had to give it another coat. Then adding a little bit more of that burnt umber brown color to the mixture, I grabbed a dry brush and just dipped it in a little bit, taking off the excess and just rubbing it all around the entire pumpkin just to give it more of dimension or darken up the color just a little bit, just around the edges. And then dipping my paintbrush in the water actually helps blend the color in nicely. And of course, I did the same thing for the leaf. These stickers from Target already has an adhesive to it and it actually sticks very well, so I knew that wasn't going to go anywhere once I stuck it down. So that was good. And for my pumpkin, I just decided to hot glue it and not minding any of the glitter on the other side. It really doesn't matter, but just adding that hot glue allowed it to stick on very nicely. And this is how the sign is looking all put together. To hang it up, I just added a piece of twine from Dollar Tree just by hot gluing it to the back of the sign. And there you have it. There's my first dupe that I created from Kirkland's. I'm not sure of the dimensions of the original one, but it does retail for $44.99, and mine only came out to about $4, not including paint. For my next DIY, I somehow lost the footage of this, but I took one of these 5-gallon paint stir sticks, cut out 2 pieces of 7 inches, glued them together with some wood glue, and using the Waverly Wax Antique paint, I went ahead and stained them and removed the excess paint with a paper towel. This is just creating a base for the next part of my project. If you already have a piece of wood like this, go ahead and use that. Then taking one of these small wooden framed chalkboards from Dollar Tree, I'm going to go ahead and stain it with the same Waverly Wax Antique paint and do the same by removing off any excess paint. Then taking a piece of sandpaper to lighten this up even more, I'm going to go ahead and sand this down and expose some of that natural wood, and also do this to the base part of this as well. Now here you can see how much it lightened up by sanding it down comparing to the base that I haven't touched yet, but now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing by sanding it all down. So this print I've been seeing used at Michael's and at Kirkland's, and I was actually able to find it on Google Images, which I was very excited about. So I'll have that down in the description box below for you if you want to recreate this. I did have to measure this out to the chalkboard because I did print it out as a 5x7, but I found that it was the best size for this as far as fitting nicely into the chalkboard and not cutting off any part of the truck. Now I'm going to be using some Mod Podge for this next step, and I'm just going to brush that on the entire chalkboard to then stick on the printout. Before placing it down on the Mod Podge, you want to make sure that this is cut out exactly to the size of the chalkboard so it fits in nice and smoothly. To then add my frame to the base, I just glued it on with some wood glue. And make sure to remove any excess glue so it dries up nicely. And here is how my little blue truck sign turned out. It only cost me $2 to make, comparing to $14.99 at Kirkland's. Now moving on to my last DIY, I'm going to be using one of these Dollar Tree 8x10 canvases and removing off the canvas with my X-Acto knife. I find that cutting down along the staples, it makes it a lot easier to be able to rip off the canvas. Removing the canvas leaves you with this really nice wooden frame that we're then going to place on the back of the canvas to trace out to be able to cut it out to be the exact size of the frame. Then go ahead and cut that out. You can always place the frame on top to make sure that it aligns properly with the canvas. Then taking some black chalk paint, I'm going to paint the entire frame. You want to make sure to cover the frame evenly and then set it off to the side to dry. Then moving on to my canvas, I'm going to prep my paint by taking some gray acrylic paint and a dab of white paint to lighten that up a little. Then with a ruler and a pencil, I'm just going to create some vertical lines going all the way across the piece of canvas. They do not have to be perfect by any means. They're just going to be more of guidelines of where you're going to start to paint. Then we're going to take the ruler and start making some horizontal lines. Then taking a medium-sized paintbrush, I'm going to dip it into the gray mixture that we created and start painting the strips going down vertically. You want to make sure to skip every other row. Then going horizontally, you'll just then start to fill in those lines going across the canvas. And again, you'll be skipping every other line. And don't mind that black mark that I first did. I actually put it in the wrong spot, but I couldn't do anything about it until it dried. So just don't even pay attention to that. But the other black squares that I'm painting in is what you want to pay attention to and where you want to place those black squares to create this buffalo check print we're making. So looking at the original print of the Kirkland's canvas, I noticed that these lines weren't perfect by any means, and the black was actually more painted on very dryly. So I suggest dabbing more of that excess black off your paintbrush before filling in your square. Also, you won't need to worry about filling in the center of this print. Now going back to the frame, I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and sand it down as much as possible, just exposing that natural wood and toning down some of that black chalk paint. You want to make sure to get inside of the frame as well. Once the buffalo check print was dry, I then created this burnt orange color, again using orange and burnt umber to mix together to create the color that I needed. And remember, just keep mixing until you're satisfied with the color. Once that was ready, I wanted to begin by drawing the outline of the larger pumpkin first. Now I'll make sure to leave the links down below of the actual Kirkland's decor pieces. That way you have something to reference off of, just like I am for this picture. When drawing this out, keep in mind that you're going to have a little pumpkin down at the bottom right corner, so you don't really need to fill in that area. Once you have that outline ready, go ahead and fill it in, and I gave this 2 coats of that color. Now, although this was the perfect color for this, I did want to stick to the original print that is from Kirkland, so I'm going to be adding more colors and more definitions just by mixing more paint. So I just added white to that same mixture we created earlier and just brushed it all around the pumpkin. Now to paint our little white pumpkin on the bottom, I'm going to be putting down a glob of white acrylic paint and just a dab of brown to create an off-white color. And then I start by making my outline and then filling that in. Then adding a little more brown to the original burnt umber color we made, I'm gonna add some definition and the grooves of the pumpkin of the orange one. by creating some darker lines to show the grooves of the pumpkin. So I'm just taking that same color and just creating more shading. You really can't go wrong by adding more definition to this piece. Then taking a really fine thin brush to dab into that burnt umber color to outline some of the areas of this pumpkin. And I just want to throw this out there. I don't want you to feel intimidated thinking like there's no way I can paint this. You totally can. I tried to make this very easy to follow, so I hope I succeed in doing so. But yeah, this is just a piece you want to have fun with, and the more shading and the more like details you add to it, the better and realistic it looks. So just taking some black paint, I'm gonna go in and paint the stem of the pumpkin, and it's meant to just look like one of those spirally, curly types of stems. So again, here I am just painting in the outline of the stem, trying to get as best of the shape I can, and then just filling that in. And then it'll look more like a stem once we add the details later. Now that the white pumpkin has had time to dry, we're gonna go back into that brown white mixture we created earlier and dab a little bit of the brown, dabbing off the excess paint and just creating the grooves of the pumpkin on the white one this time. So I added a little bit more of that brown paint into that mixture and just kind of spread it all over the pumpkin just to dirty it up a bit, give it more of the shadows and dimensions it needed. If you ever add in too much of one color, you can go back into regular white and just paint over it or just blend it in better. And then using that fine tip paintbrush again, I went into brown and black this time to create outlines on the white pumpkin. And we're also going to be making the stem of this pumpkin as well, just drawing out the outline, which this one isn't so much curly, it's just a normal curvy type of stem. So we're going to draw the outline and fill that in. And again, because I felt like I needed to add a little more shadowing, I just went back into that burnt umber color and the mixture that we made earlier, just to give this more shadowing and dirty it up a bit. Adding shadows and highlights to these types of paintings really help bring out the picture. So then you'll see that I just dab into some pure white acrylic paint and just add in some highlights to the pumpkin. Now going back to our larger pumpkin, I'm going to take that fine paintbrush again, and I'm going to add a little bit of white lines to kind of give it more of highlights as well in the areas that we created shadowing. But I later then use a wipey, which is really good to have on hand for this, and kind of shade it in and just dab it and rub it in to help create more of a shading rather than such a harsh line. I then mixed yellow and orange together, and then grabbing a new paintbrush, I dabbed off as much of the excess paint as I could, and then just rubbed it on the areas that would create more of a highlight, just creating another type of dimension again with this highlighted color. I wanted it to be as similar to the original print from Kirkland's as possible. I also threw in a little bit of white just to help give it that highlight it needed. And then, like I did before, I just grabbed my wipe and blended in those colors better. So now, using that thin brush again, we're going to go into some gray paint to add some details to the stem. So this isn't quite perfect, but I don't feel like it really needs to be. You're just creating that illusion that this is a spiral type curly stem. Then we'll move right along to the little pumpkin, adding in some details with that same gray paint. And this one I'm just adding in a bunch of random lines, letting the paint run out, and just creating more marks around the stem. So now the painting is complete, we can now glue it onto the frame. I usually start by gluing the very top of the canvas first, and then stretching out the canvas down to be able to glue it to the sides of the frames, and then at the end you just be able to glue it at the very bottom. I find that stretching the canvas down avoids any bumps or lumps while you're gluing down your canvas, and it doesn't show in the actual painting. And here is the finished result. I am really proud of myself for this one. It only cost me $1 to make, apart from the paints I already had on hand, as opposed to $12.99 from Kirkland's. But I love it, and I think it's pretty close to the original one. I had a lot of fun recreating these Kirkland dupes. It was really cool to see them come to life when I had them in mind. But I would love to know which one is your favorite down below in the comments, so please let me know. Also, I would love to know what fall decor you would like to see next, so please leave those in the comments down below. Don't forget to check me out on Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you want to see more DIYs like these. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I can't wait to get started on some more DIYs for you guys, so stay tuned for those, and I'll see you all in my next one.